Hello and good morning friends, welcome to CEC Live Lectures. Dear friends, today in this session we are going to continue with our series on women and history. Friends, today we would be talking on one of the most interesting topics, and the topic is portrayal of women in the media. Friends, for this discussion, we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Shruti Vip. Dr. Shruti Vip is Assistant Professor in Department of History, PGDAB, Evening College, University of Delhi. Dear friends, Dr. Vip has immense experience. Her experience always helps us out in understanding the various topics in detail. We try to get the deep insight into the topic all because of her. So let's welcome once again our guest, Dr. Shruti Vip. Before that, we would like to tell you all that if you have certain set of questions in the mind regarding the topic or afterwards, so you are requested to call right to us in the studio. Our toll-free number is 1-800-110-430. I repeat, our number is 1-800-110-430. This is the toll-free number through which you can ask questions from Dr. Shruti Vip. Friends, you are also requested to call in the last 10 minutes of the lecture so that you have the insight into the topic, and yes, your queries will be resolved right in this live transmission. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Shruti Vip. Hello ma'am, welcome to the lecture.
Hello Geetika, thanks a lot for this wonderful opportunity, and I welcome all of you back to this very interesting discussion that we are going to continue from yesterday. Now, I had begun yesterday a discussion on media and gender and how one needs to be aware of the role played by media in procreating gender stereotypes. So, an image, a particular image of any person or any sex or any individual that already exists in society is kind of reinforced by various media projections. And continuing the discussion from there, we would be talking about some media stereotypes. First of all, let us discuss the meaning of the term stereotype. Stereotype refers to a code, a kind of a code that gives audiences a quick, a common and a general kind of an understanding of a person or a group of people or a community, usually relating to their class, ethnicity, sex, sexual orientation, social role or occupation. So therefore, the problem definitely persists, and it is not as if media has only a modernizing or a reforming role to play. It definitely is leading to strengthening of and reinforcement of various kind of stereotypes, and it is a major problem that one needs to contend with. So therefore, due to this problematic, some actions were taken by UNESCO, and UNESCO published guidelines called Gender Neutral Language. This was published in 1995 Beijing Conference. So this is an interesting reference and a guide that it is advisable to use while formulating advertisements, etc. So just giving some examples from this guide, I would like to give you a few examples. Like for example, earlier a term that was used widely was mankind to refer to the entire humanity, which also included women. So the most universal term that was used was man or mankind, but now it is preferred that one uses neutral words like people, humanity, human beings, humankind rather than mankind, the human species, then human race, and instead of talking in terms of him or his, it is better to use terms like we, ourselves, and if you are insisting on writing men, then women also must be included in the sentence. So it is a more universal kind of usage of words that does not only specifically talk about men or male. Similarly, instead of the term manpower, it recommended the usage of terms like staff, labor, workforce, employees, human power in order to refer to group or group actions. Then similarly, man hour was replaced by person hour or work hour, which had a more universal appeal and which did not specifically indicate a man as being the representative of the entire human race. Another example, instead of founding fathers, a better term that is being used is founders. So founding fathers is no more the correct usage, it is founders. And similarly, due to all these changes in usages, there has been a change in the way language is being written, particularly in various educational institutions, in official documents, etc. But still, the problem continues, and now we would be discussing as to how various gender stereotypes can be associated with various kind of media. First of all, let me discuss with you the whole concept of gender. Gender can be described as a social, cultural and a psychological construct, and it has nothing to do with sex primarily. Though one is born either male or female, it is the social construct, it is the society and the entire socialization process that helps one imbibe the various characteristics that are implicit in masculinity or femininity. Societies have always had ways of differentiating between men and women, between masculinity as well as femininity, through various kind of assertions, through various kind of codes, behavior patterns, etc. And this ultimately led to reinforcement of gender stereotypes. And since most of the societies have been patriarchal, so women have generally been sidelined and are more vulnerable to the manipulation and subjugation. So the stereotypes have continued for so long, and they continue to persist unless and until we as human beings realize that there are stereotypes which need to be countered. So this realization is very important, and only after one realizes one can think of taking the next practical steps. Now, giving some examples again from the changing code of conduct and how there has been a clear-cut difference between masculinity and femininity. There are certain characteristics that are ascribed to both the qualities. For example, men are generally considered masculine, dominant, strong, rational and active. That is, they believe in doing things. Whereas women are considered as weak, passive, intuitive, emotional, also communicative. They end up talking, and also submissive at the end of the day. So similarly, some other binaries that one can talk about, men and women, they have been traced in various ways. Like men usually like technology, they are tech savvy, computers, cars, and they are also habitual to getting drunk, and they smoke, and one should be quite used to these kind of behaviors, because ultimately men are men, and they also can indulge in casual sex. Whereas women are considered to be more fond of shopping, and occasionally social drinking is permissible with friends, and they are more into committed relationships. So these kind of stereotypes have continued to pervade our understanding of how men and women are, and media through their various projections like TV serials and advertisements, various write-ups, etc., have continued to reinforce these stereotypes. Now, coming to carrying forward the discussion on representation of women in various media forms, I would be discussing briefly on the television, the role of television, and particularly the role played by the soap operas, the various TV serials that are the very core strategy of TV channels to entice audience. TV serials or soap operas or simply soaps are to women what sports and news channels are to men and to youngsters, and especially for those women who are housewives and who have ample time at their disposal. These soaps are the main source of entertainment, and they really look forward to these shows. TV serials are often accused of stereotyping and reinforcing stereotypes and not depicting women in a realistic manner. And the same idea can also be considered while one is talking of mainstream cinema, which we have already discussed. Now, in this lecture, I will explore some of the aspects related to women's representation in Indian serials and what has gone wrong with the way women are being projected and the way storylines are unfolding in one serial after another. Various TV serials in India have had a knack of stereotyping role models and also stereotyping people belonging to different religions, regions, speaking different languages, and in fact the entire core strategy of having comedy is usually it usually uses these kind of stereotypes, and various jokes and satires are generally built around these stereotypes. A typical woman in an Indian serial wears an expensive sari, jewelry, heavy makeup, and more often than not is seen as a housewife with a little or no say in running the household except cooking, celebrating festivals, and plotting. So my question is is this what women are all about? Is it only to get decked and to be presentable even while you are doing the household chores, you are working in the kitchen? So that kind of ideal image, that ideal bahu or that ideal woman of the house has really gone so far and has created a kind of dichotomy and has created a lot of pressure the way women are seen and the way women are in actual real life. So various serials like Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, then Kumkum, कसौटी जिंदगी की, कहानी घर घर की, they have time and again reinforced these kind of stereotypes, and the problem continues to persist as more and more serials are adding themselves to this list. So women in India, while they have attained education, they are professionally quite sound, and they are also running various businesses, they are heading corporate houses, and they are active in every field, whether you take into consideration IT or medical or police service, administrative services, etc. But there is hardly any serial which takes into account this professional side of women's personality, and it's more the emphasis is more on their domesticity and on their homely nature and how they are nurturing the family and how they are struggling to keep the joint family alive, or they are trying to break up a joint family by playing upon the fears and inconsistencies in the household. So there is definitely an absence of the right kind of portrayal, and the changes that have come about in modern India have not really been taken into consideration while framing various programs, particularly serials. Even when working women is projected on screen and she manages to find some space on the screen, the depiction remains stereotypical. For example, in Diya Aur Bati, the leading lady happens to be an Indian police service officer, but the moment she comes home, her way of dressing and her treatment at home is no different from any other typical bahu of any other TV serial like Tulsi Virani of Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, or a Parvati Agrawal of Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki. So therefore the change has definitely not come some, and wherever some innovations are being made, they are also within the same old parameters. As a result, what has emerged is a stream of regressive daily soaps on Indian television, and a working woman is shown either as a superwoman or an ultra modern girl without much morality that is left in her due to the new kind of lifestyle that she has adopted, and there is sadly no middle ground. So the kind of women that are found in day-to-day lives or in normal households have no kind of representation on the screen. For example, the character of Kumkum that actress Juhi Parmar played was a smash hit among women. Therefore, women in modern day Indian television end up wearing blingy outfits, jewelry, and they think that they are going to be perfect role models for rest of females of Indian society. So therefore, definitely one needs to look into these issues. Another problem has been an overdose of the theme of scheming vamps, as if, you know, the vampish behavior is limited to women, and they have all the time on this earth and energies in themselves to keep on scheming and to make the serials more and more interesting. This kind of projection is spiced up repeatedly. However, I would not say that all Indian serials fall in this genre, or that the present trend was always the trend. If we go back a few decades, if we take into account the time period from 1980s to 1990s, then one can talk about various serials that were more meaningful, more balanced in their approach, and I would say that they were far ahead of their times in projecting a more balanced and a more realistic portrayal of women. So the 1990s TV serials like Sans, Dekh Bhai Dekh, Udaan, Tanha, Alpaviram, Hum Panch, Surbhi, Shanti, they definitely belong to the genre of non-stereotypical portrayal of women. And even if some comedy was being attempted, for example in Hum Panch, it was not at the cost of making fun of any any particular community or any language or any such derogatory remark. It was more about the way family was trying to adjust with each other, and how the girls had their own unique character, and they had their own styles, and the whole humor was built around that rather than in criticizing others. So the whole mode of entertainment has changed over a period of 2 to 3 decades. Another interesting serial that one can talk about is Shanti, which was story of an illegitimate girl who grows up and gets educated, takes up a job, and now she starts a struggle against her rapist father. So again, she stands up for her raped mother, and this kind of a projection definitely added a lot of strength to women characters. Then another example that can be given is that of Mandira Bedi, who played the role of a very strong and independent working woman, unlike today's decked up ladies. And the serials of 1980s and 1990s picked up issues of illicit relationships, flawed characters, and let me tell you that no one is born perfect, and no one is as beautiful and as decked up all the time the way these TV serials project women. So therefore, the kind of portrayals that were there in 1980s and 1990s, which also talked about the grey shades of one's personality, the darker areas of one personality, and there was no such great insistence on looking presentable 24/7. So those programs were definitely more conducive to an overall development and growth of society. However, post 1990s, with the onset of globalization, there has been definitely an impact on the way media has progressed. Various changes that have come about, which have also changed the logistics, are the 24-hour cable TV network, the Dish TV networks, which has brought about a deluge of TV serials for Indian audiences. And now the prime mover is the race for maximum TRP. So the entire idea that a program is based on is how to indulge in profit maximization, which has definitely resulted in some kind of degeneration of quality, degeneration of the storyline, as well as direction. Women are shown either as superhumans or as worthless. So there is no middle path for them, and they cannot be shown as normal human beings who have dreams, aspirations, and either they are highest on the moral pedestal or they are scheming vamps. Now, another interesting discussion during the course of my lecture would be the content analysis and the statistical evidence, which also points out to how various kind of stereotypes are continuing, and they are not found only in the soap operas but also in various other TV programs. For example, the content analysis and statistical evidence paints a quite bleak picture, and according to the Media and Gender Monitor, only 24% of the news stories were reported about women globally in 2011. So this trend of gender inequality not only exists in India, but it is a world phenomenon, as is pointed out by this report that came out in 2011, that only 24% of the news stories refer to women, rest are appropriated by men. Then another interesting insight is that how women were focus of only 19% of news stories in politics and government in 2010. And of the 84 news websites that were monitored in the Global Media Monitoring Report, in the Global Media Monitoring Project, 23% of the newsmakers were represented by women in 2010. So rest of the newsmakers obviously belonged to the other sex. So therefore, men are not only in charge of making news, but also reading news, and in charge of the government, in charge of politics, and so forth. Now, coming to the issue of advertising, which again needs to be handled separately, as it is definitely a core piece of media, one must understand the kind of representation that has gone on in media as far as women are concerned. If we pick the morning newspaper or various magazines, or we look at various hoardings on the road, then television, then while moving on the road, if you happen to look at the bus or even the metro now, so, ranging from shopping malls to railway stations, advertising is all around us, and it is now even embedded in the web pages as well as the smartphone apps. And so advertising is something which is running round the clock, and there is no respite from advertising even if you are in your private space. Now, due to the repetitive and all-pervasive visual nature of advertising, the kind of imagery of men and women that is projected in advertising is very culturally significant. It becomes very culturally significant because the kind of influence it has on the viewer's psyche is definitely far-reaching, much more than when that person is reading something or watching something. It is the advertising that has a far more greater impact. Advertisements that we come across every day are full of statements about the ideals of femininity, about what it means to be a woman, and about how a woman ought to behave in public and private sphere. So therefore, advertising is definitely an important part of the overall discussion, and even in advertising, it is the objectification of women which is going to be the core discussion point in my future lecture that I would be continuing in a short while. Thank you. Welcome back. We were discussing the issue of objectification, that is intentionally or unintentionally attempted by media. Now, as far as objectification is concerned, it can be described as a process whereby one makes someone into an object, someone who is not an object but a person. And this is done by conferring the properties of an object into a person. So therefore, making someone into something and doing this repeatedly, which ultimately results in stereotyping. Now, there are various ads that are projected repeatedly in media, which shape the way we think and behave individually as well as collectively. Advertising's influence isn't only obvious, it also affects us on a subconscious level. So that is another problematic that is there, because it is not only what we are perceiving actively, but also we carry that in our subconscious level, and then we end up making decisions on the basis of that subconscious level. So therefore, over years of exposure, certain kind of stereotypes are repeatedly created and procreated, and then ultimately they become part of the psyche, and then that ultimately erupts at the level of society and the various actions that are taken by individuals in the society. What affects us is not our experience of our watching a particular ad, one ad or any individual kind of a portrayal, but of the totality that it represents. Therefore, certain kinds of messages, when they are displayed over and over again, that definitely kind of molds the subconscious, and this is where it is important to understand the kind of culture media is generating. Now, another problem that one encounters while researching on media is the problematic of myth versus reality. So therefore, what exists in reality is hardly shown, and what does not exist is repeatedly shown, and in fact the viewers start accepting that as reality, and then they start changing themselves, or they want to change themselves to fit into those kind of projected role models. So therefore, young female models in advertisements are free from blemishes. They have glowing complexion, they are fair, they are free from wrinkles, facial and body hair. But how this myth of beauty has been created? It is either through photoshopping, computer retouching, etc. So therefore, instead of understanding what lies behind this myth of beauty, the youngsters, they fall prey to these various harmful mechanisms, various mushrooming parlors that indulge in all kind of treatments, skin treatments, and they either end up rigorously exercising to tone themselves down or to enhance muscles and curves, thereby refusing to understand, thereby not accepting the reality that it is rather the digital photocopying that has kind of projected this image of perfection and beauty on screen. Also, there is a need to take into account changing portrayals, particularly from 1990s onwards. The portrayals have definitely become less stereotypical over the decades, with more advertisements now showing women as breadwinners, professionally successful, having equal stake in decision making, also independent from family responsibilities and some other kind of progressive representations. And but at the same time, there has been an increase in advertisements in which women are depicted as sex objects. So both the processes are going side by side, and therefore there has hardly been any mellowing down in this gender disparity that continues to pervade in media projections. Now, discussing the stereotyping in advertising, which one can easily make out if you view some ads near and around you. Advertisements define what is style and what is good taste, not as possibilities or suggestions, but as unquestionably desirable goal. So therefore, advertisements have a direct impact, and when one is looking at an advertisement, it is not like a mellowed down or a kind or a gentle reminder or a suggestion, but it comes as a barrel of a gun which is pointedly speaking something, and it wants to convey the message in a span of 1 or 2 minutes effectively. Therefore, stereotyping in the advertising realm proves extremely dangerous, and it often contributes to reinforcement of wrong ideologies getting validated effectively day by day, and therefore not changing the social order, rather than making it further creating regressive practices and strengthening the regressive moral social order which has been existing since past. Now, another question that arises is as to why do advertisers stereotype? Why can't they take a different path, or why can't they show alternative image, or why can't they end up making something new, something novel, which also might sell the product but in a different way? So stereotypes are easier than getting to know every man and woman in the world individually and personally. So therefore, it is much easier for advertisers to come up with ideas that are more acceptable at the mass scale. And advertisers are especially prone to using them because they have to sell the product at the end of the day. They assume that all women and men are similar to make targeting audiences a simpler process and cost effective. So therefore, rather than thinking out of the box and rather than indulging in some reflective thinking, which would also involve some kind of social re-engineering, they end up taking the stereotypical route to success. Now here again I would like to refer to the CEDAW clause, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the world's most comprehensive legal instrument to outline women's rights. Now, by 2001, almost 168 countries, that is 2/3 of the members of the UN, were party to CEDAW. They all had signed CEDAW, and India also ratified it in 1993. Article 5 of the CEDAW clause enjoins the state parties to take appropriate measures in order to dilute any kind of gender inequality in various advertisements or media projections. And it clearly states to modify practices which are based on the idea of the inferiority or superiority of either or of the sexes or on stereotyped roles for men and women. So thereby considerably enhancing the powers of the audience and also giving strict directions as to how advertisements should be made and how various projections should be attempted. Now, there were some regulations that were specific to advertising also, which are quite relevant. The Code of Commercial Advertising on Doordarshan also has a clause that prohibits ads that emphasize passive, submissive qualities in women and also indecent, repulsive, offensive treatment that has to be avoided in all the advertisements. The Code of Advertising Practice that was implemented in 1985 and later on it was amended also in 1995 and more recently in 1999 is also into force. The Code for Self-Regulation in Advertising by the Advertising Standards Council of India has also done sufficient work in this direction. But the problem is that these are more of general regulations and it does not have any women-specific clause to be protected from stereotyping and manipulation. So therefore, there still needs to be a realization that women needed to be treated with more concern and more awareness, and the way these projections have been going on since long, they need to be treated separately, and separate clauses must be invoked specifically with regard to women. Now, discussing various instances of gender stereotypes that have emerged time and again, one can talk about various kind of portrayals like functional ranking. That is, various advertisements have a tendency to depict men in executive roles and more functional, more agile, more active when collaborating with women. And here an example can be given of the Virgin Mobile. Then another level one can discuss ritualization of subordination. That is, an overemphasis and an overabundance of images of women who are lying on floors or lying on bed, or as objects of men's mock assaults. So therefore one can give examples of Zatek Dio, where the way a woman looks at a man donning a particular brand of Dio, she is floored and she is no more in control of herself. Then ads showing the feminine touch, the tendency of women to caress or to touch various objects that they are advertising repeatedly conveys the soft touch a woman has. For example, the prestige advertisement. Then coming to the issue of family, as to how family is the core strength of a woman, fathers are generally depicted as physically distant from their families or as relating primarily to sons, whereas mothers are depicted as primarily relating to daughters. For example, various ads related to various detergents or the ad of Airtel. Now, coming to the issue of stereotype of roles. Men are generally more likely than women to be shown in working roles, whereas a large majority of female characters are depicted in non-working roles. So this again has been the trend repeatedly, though now there has been some change in this process also. The type of working role and non-working role has been found to differ between sexes, which again is a reality that has not really been taken into account. Therefore, 5 types of working roles that are projected on screen, for example, high-level business, an entertainer, or a professional sports person, or a mid-level business, or a white-collar worker and a blue-collar worker. Now, one finds definite categorization of male and females in these workers, with far more number of males being represented than women. And in non-working roles, it is definitely women who are projected in larger numbers, along with the family, recreational and decorative roles. And this also has been the trend worldwide. Now, coming to some more examples of role stereotypes, various advertisements, while they show mothers serving meals to their families, and very few show fathers doing that, suggest that mothers do all the housework and cooking and they really enjoy this. Whereas the reality in urban India is slowly changing, where women are also equally busy, and in fact, in some cases, they have the demand of dual burden. So fathers willingly pitch in and they want to help their wives, and probably they end up laying the table or even cooking in the kitchen. But these kind of instances are rarely projected in a positive manner. Men are invariably engaged in physically active pastimes like sports, rock climbing or canoeing, whereas few women are shown indulging in such activities in various advertisements. Whereas teenage girls are shown grooming themselves, putting makeup, brushing their hair repeatedly, generally worrying about their appearances, their pimples, whereas very few teenage boys are shown indulging in such pastimes, thereby again validating the stereotype. Then young boys are playing with action toys such as trucks or superhero figures, whereas girls are hardly shown indulging in such activities. Therefore, the stereotypes continue to pervade, and another example that one can talk about is the stereotype of desirability. So for women, the desirability attribute includes the physical characteristics, that is being thin, long-legged, slim-hipped, large-breasted, attractive, voluptuous figure, etc. Whereas for men, the advertisements pick up models who have physical characteristics of being muscular, possessing a full head of hair, etc. Therefore, some characteristics are portrayed in advertisements as desirable in both the sexes, such as being tall, fit, athletic, young and light-skinned, thereby again continuing with the trend of repeated stereotyping. Then another stereotyping that one can talk about is that of commodification. Commodification means that how a person or an individual becomes associated with certain commodities and is supposed to imbibe the characters, the end product that is part of that commodity. So therefore, ads often turn women into commodities that please men and project women's images as male defined as against individuals of any inherent worth. So for example, the advertisement of Lux can be considered in this genre. Similarly, women are considered as wooable, and various examples can be given of men's perfumes, deos and Brill cream. The association of beauty with these commodities, that is women, is so strong that society tends to look at ugly women with disdain, and it appears as if there is no one ugly that is existing in today's world, and even if they are ugly, they ought to remain behind the screen. They cannot be shown as real beings, human beings, normal beings. And the best example of this kind of projection is Fair and Lovely. Now, it is not only women who are prey to this kind of stereotyping, it is also children. Stereotyping of children, where children are shown as dirty, naughty, rowdy, intelligent people and made to appear as more desirable to parents. For example, the Lifebuoy cleaning campaign, and here also it is the boys who are picked up for depicting such themes. So girls have no right to get dirty and to get they cannot give that feeling of pride to their mothers that some soap like some detergent like Lifebuoy can clean a girl's dirty linen. So therefore, this stereotype has even percolated down to the level of childhood, and whenever one sees children in ads, it is either a boy or a girl, or it is two boys or more than two boys who are kind of trying to create a scene. An example, Surf Excel, Daag Achhe Hain, a few ads that did feature young girls, though was an exception. It projected them with their mothers in ads for beauty products also. So most reinforced stereotypical images of being chatterboxes or sweet, delicate things, etc., are generally associated with the girl child. For example, Medicare. Now, stereotypes of food habits are also being generated time and again, and the number of ads for food in men's magazines is very few, whereas a number of ads for food products in women's magazines appear in far larger numbers. The ads that do appear in men's magazines are generally of fast food, Kapo noodles, chocolate bars, ready-to-eat stuff, etc., thereby conveying the message that men can only indulge in these kind of quick fixes, and wherever it is the cooking needs lot more preparation and time, it is women who have to pitch in. So at the end of the day, the advertisements repeatedly convey various images of violence, sexuality, and hostile acts. The lack of gender and racial diversity on TV seems to be continuing with the trend of outdated and negative stereotypes, which have refused to imbibe the issue of diversity even more so. Programs that have been told from a male point of view have outnumbered, whereas those from a female point of view have further come down in their numbers. Therefore, the gap between shows definitely portrays female characters with dignity and respect, and programs that sexually exploit women appears to have widened. And it is high time that we fulfill this gap, and women need not exist to be ogled, used or demeaned repeatedly, something that has been attempted time and again. Another sad reality is that in various media projections, advertisements, etc., there is no space for the middle-aged woman or an aging woman, a woman with disability, or a woman out of proportions due to her size, or a low income mom struggling to get by, struggling to make two ends meet. Therefore, various studies findings have also shown that while male voice is overwhelmingly the voice of authority in most commercials, the voice of women remains silent. My lecture is still incomplete. There are some important theories that need to be discussed, but since the time is running short, so I shall be continuing in the future course of discussion. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for giving us a precious session where we discussed how women is portrayed, particularly in the media. Now, the question arises: when we are talking about the women empowerment, so does media has helped women in uplifting her image also?
Well, as I said during the course of my discussion, it's a two-way process, and we cannot say that media has only been the procreator of the negative image, or all the negativity that is associated with women is not a result of media projection only, and it has definitely played an important role in giving a very good opportunity to women to adopt media as not only as a profession but also to come up with the stories associated with them, to make them more visible on screen as well as in the various news. But the problem is the way they are still projected in various kind of portrayals, particularly with regard to cinema, particularly with regard to serials, where there is definitely a lot that needs to be done. But yes, Geetika, I agree with you that media has played an important role, and it in fact can be more active in bringing about the desired change.
So we believe that when we are talking about specifically the portrayal, yes, if we keep aside the positive image, but if we see the negative image, women in a particular, or if we talk about housewife, the way they are portrayed in the soaps, is it like she's a vamp, she is always engaged in the plotting and planning, but this isn't so. Yeah. We have seen women, if we talk about the working women, she is managing her households also, she's looking towards her professional life also. So there should be a twist, there should be a change the way the women is portrayed.
Definitely, that's the point I was trying to make, and you have beautifully put it, that women are either shown as icing on the candy, all beautifully decked up in heavy saris and jewelry and dutifully performing their household chores, or they are projected as vamps. So there exists nothing in between, and we need to understand that all human beings have characters of black and white. There are shades of grey in between, and why only women should have this responsibility of looking so decked up and beautiful all the time. This definitely has an impact on so many lower middle class and middle class women who watch these serials, and they are always under pressure that they should also acquire such kind of wardrobe and jewelry and all this kind of portrayal is not only deviating them from their life goals, which have to be much higher. Think practically how much people are spending on clothing. Why are malls today always full of people who want to shop endlessly? It's an unending race, and it's a vicious cycle. So therefore, I think simplicity must be portrayed on screen, because an ordinary woman is definitely simple, she's practical, she's hardworking, and she also wants to enjoy life like any other normal human being, just like men. So why not project women in that light rather than getting bogged to what she's wearing, how she's putting her sindoor, and the way that that image of an ideal pativrata nari is projected repeatedly.
Yes, when we are talking about especially about the equality, and we are giving chance to both men and women to represent themselves and to integrate themselves and represent themselves as one, then it is the responsibility of the media to portray the women in the right manner. And yes, we salute to the media also for portraying her, for empowering her, for showing her positive side, for bringing her issues, because through media only various issues are highlighted, and those issues in one way or the another aware us also.
Definitely.
So friends, if you have any queries or if you want feedback for this particular lecture, then do write to us at info.cec@nic.in. We will love to have your queries, and we will try to give answers to your questions when next time Dr. Shruti Vip visits our studio. So keep watching us, keep writing us. Yes, your feedbacks are important. The lecture is going to be uploaded on YouTube soon, and all the lectures pertaining to the series on women and history are there for you. So dear friends, today we take your leave. We would be meeting again. Till then, take care. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.